Through my wife's friend at a post-holiday gathering, I accidentally discovered that Michelle, 44, had been unfaithful throughout the early years of our relationship. The revelation shattered 2 decades of what I thought was a perfect marriage. I'm David, 43, and this is the story of how trust, once broken, can poison even the sweetest memories. Our story began like a classic romance, high school sweethearts who seemed destined to be together. Michelle was a senior when I was a junior, and we connected during AP Physics study sessions. She had this infectious laugh that would echo through the library, earning us occasional stern looks from Mrs. Patterson, the elderly librarian who pretended to be stricter than she really was. Those early days were filled with innocent moments, sharing French fries at the local diner, studying together until the library closed, and stealing quick kisses between classes. I still remember the night I asked her to be my girlfriend. It was during our school's winter formal. She wore a deep blue dress that matched her eyes perfectly. We danced to a popular song, and under the cheap disco ball's spinning light, she said yes. That moment felt perfect, untouchable. Looking back now, I wonder if anything was ever as pure as it seemed. When Michelle left for university, 2 states away, we made elaborate plans to maintain our relationship. I would drive up every other weekend, and she would come home for major holidays. We spent hours on late-night phone calls, sharing our days and planning our future. The distance was challenging, but I never doubted our commitment, or at least, I never doubted mine. During those 2 years, I worked extra shifts at my uncle's automotive shop to afford the gas money for my weekend visits. Sometimes I'd arrive exhausted, having driven straight from my Friday classes at community college, but seeing her smile made it all worthwhile. Well, that's what I wanted to believe. The truth began unraveling during what should have been a casual dinner party just after this past Christmas. Michelle had invited some of her old college friends over, people I'd known peripherally for years, but never really connected with deeply. The evening started with everyone gathered around our dining room table, sharing plates of Michelle's famous lasagna and bottles of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. As conversations often do after a few glasses of wine, the topic drifted to how couples met. Michelle mentioned meeting me in high school, but didn't elaborate on our dating history. Her former roommate, Jessica, exclaimed how remarkable it was that we ended up together after our wild college years. I played along, making a self-deprecating joke about my supposed wild days, even though my college experience had mostly involved studying and working part-time. That's when another friend, Mandy, began sharing what seemed like an innocent story. Remember that time in sophomore year when she started, but Michelle cut her off abruptly, claiming she felt uncomfortable discussing old college stories. The sudden shift in her demeanor sent warning signals through my mind. The room fell silent, heavy with unspoken words. I decided to clarify things, mentioning that we had actually been dating continuously since high school. The awkward silence that followed felt suffocating. Jessica wouldn't look at me, and Mandy suddenly became very interested in her wine glass. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced small talk and uncomfortable pauses. As the guests were leaving, Mandy's husband Mark pulled me aside in our foyer. "Look, man," he said, his voice low and serious, "you should really have an honest conversation with Michelle about her college years. Some things need to be addressed." His words left me feeling hollow, like someone had slapped the shit out of me. During the drive home from dropping off our last guest, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. I asked Michelle about what Mark had meant. She dismissed it initially, saying it wasn't important. When I pressed further, she became defensive, insisting that the past should stay in the past. Her reaction only intensified my suspicions. That night, as we got ready for bed, I took a stand. I'm going to stay at my brother's until you're ready to tell me the truth about what happened during college, I said, throwing some clothes into an overnight bag. Michelle watched from our bedroom doorway, her face a mask of carefully controlled emotions. You're overreacting, she said, but her hands fidgeting with her wedding ring, a nervous habit I noticed over the years. It was 20 years ago. None of it matters now. But it did matter. It mattered because whatever had happened had been significant enough for her friends to remember 2 decades later. It mattered because she couldn't look me in the eye when I asked about it. Most importantly, it mattered because, for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was living with a stranger. I spent that night at my brother Sonny's house, tossing and turning on his guest room bed, my mind racing with possibilities. The next morning, Michelle showed up, looking anxious and disheveled. Sonny made himself scarce, heading to the grocery store to give us privacy. Sitting in my brother's living room that morning, Michelle finally broke down. Her confession came in fragments, each revelation more painful than the last. During those first 2 years of college, she had been intimate with multiple men, at least 12 different partners, including 3 she had later introduced to me as study group friends during my campus visits. It didn't mean anything, she insisted. We were so young, and the distance, I didn't think we would actually last. Her words felt like daggers. I had driven 4 hours every other weekend to see her, worked extra shifts to afford those trips, skipped my own prom because she said she couldn't bear the thought of me going with someone else. The betrayal went deeper than the infidelity itself. One of these men had attended our wedding, had been part of our social circle for years because he'd married one of Michelle's close friends. Every time we'd shared dinners, celebrated birthdays, or attended their children's events, he had known. They had both known. As Michelle continued talking, more details emerged. There had been a pregnancy scare I'd never known about. She'd maintained contact with several of these men through social media, hidden under innocent-seeming connections. During those college years, when I would visit campus and attend parties with her, some of these men would be there. She would introduce them casually, never letting on about their history. Did they know about me? I asked. Some did, she finally admitted. Others, I told them we were just high school friends trying to stay in touch. The room spun. Every memory of those college visits suddenly felt tainted. How many times had I shaken hands with men who had been with my girlfriend just days before? How many times had I sat in study groups, joined pizza runs, or attended campus events with people who knew I was being deceived? My brother returned from his conveniently long grocery trip to find me sitting alone, Michelle having left after her confession. Sonny didn't ask for details, just handed me a beer and sat with me in silence. That silence meant more than any words could have. The next few days passed in a blur. I initiated divorce proceedings on January 15th, much to the shock of our families. Our children, Cameron, 19, and Sophia, 17, were away at the time, Cam at college, and Sophie at a winter sports training camp. We agreed to wait until they returned to tell them in person. Our family's reactions were predictably defensive. Michelle's parents, who had always treated me like a son, insisted that everyone makes mistakes and that 20 years of marriage shouldn't be thrown away over ancient history. My own mother, surprisingly, suggested that I take time to process before making any permanent decisions. But they didn't understand. This wasn't just about the physical infidelity. It was about 2 decades of lies, of carefully maintained deceptions. Every time we'd reminisced about our college years, every time we'd talked about our journey together, every time we'd told our children about staying true to your first love, all of it had been built on false foundations. The therapy sessions began almost immediately. Initially, we went together. attempting to understand if there was anything left to salvage. During our second session, Michelle tried to rationalize her actions, suggesting that sleeping with multiple partners during a long-distance relationship was normal college behavior and that I was overreacting. Would you have considered it normal if I had done the same? I asked. Her silence was deafening. The therapist gently pointed out this double standard. Michelle had explicitly discouraged me from attending my own prom with a female friend, had made me promise not to date others during our separation, had even joked that her father would come after me if I was unfaithful. During one particularly intense session, Michelle finally admitted to something that broke me completely. I didn't think you'd ever find out, she said. I thought I was protecting our relationship by keeping it secret. That's when I realized she wasn't sorry for the betrayal. She was sorry for getting caught. Telling our children was the hardest part. We waited until both were home, Cameron on winter break from college and Sophia back from her training camp. Michelle wanted to present a united front, but I insisted on complete honesty. We sat them down in our living room, the same room where we'd celebrated countless Christmas mornings and family game nights. Cameron, ever perceptive, sensed the gravity of the situation immediately. Is someone sick? He asked, his eyes darting between us. Sophia sat quietly, already clutching the throw pillow she'd had since childhood, her security blanket in difficult moments. No one's sick. Your mother and I are getting divorced. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Sophia, our fierce, competitive daughter, asked the question that knocked the wind out of both of us. Dad, did you cheat on Mom? I can still see Michelle's face crumpling at that moment. Our daughter's automatic assumption that I was the unfaithful one spoke volumes about the image we'd cultivated. Michelle, the devoted wife and mother, me, the one who'd been working late hours recently on a big project. No, sweetheart, Michelle said. I was the one who was unfaithful a long time ago, before you were born. What followed was a carefully edited version of events. We spared them the details, but explained that trust had been broken in ways that couldn't be repaired. Cameron, studying psychology in college, asked surprisingly mature questions about long-term deception and its impact on relationships. Sophia just cried, her tears soaking into that old pillow. The aftermath was complicated. Cameron threw himself into research, sending me articles about trauma and betrayal. Sophia, on the other hand, started acting out. She skipped swim practice, her passion since age 6, and her grades began slipping. The guidance counselor called, concerned about her sudden withdrawal from friends. During this time, more details about Michelle's past emerged through conversations with her old roommates. Mandy, feeling guilty about her decades-long silence, revealed that 12 partners was a conservative estimate. She told me about parties I'd known nothing about how Michelle had maintained separate social circles that never intersected with my visits. We thought you knew, Mandy said during a coffee meeting that felt like a confession. Michelle told us you both had an understanding about seeing other people. It wasn't until your wedding that I realized she'd lied to us too. The therapy sessions continued, now focused on co-parenting rather than reconciliation. During one session, Michelle revealed something that shattered any lingering doubt about my decision to divorce. 10 years ago, when our intimate life had hit a rough patch, she'd been distant because my attempts to spice things up reminded her of experiences with other men, experiences she claimed were meaningless, yet had clearly left their mark. I couldn't separate the memories, she admitted in therapy. When you suggested trying new things, all I could think about was college, and then I felt guilty. The revelation hit me so hard, it felt like it gave me a concussion. For 2 years, I'd blamed myself for our intimacy issues, thinking I wasn't exciting enough, creative enough, attentive enough. All the while, she harbored secrets that poisoned even our most private moments. Then came the final straw. During a mediation session about division of assets, Michelle casually mentioned going on a date with a coworker, someone she'd claimed was just a friend during our marriage. She wasn't apologetic, just worried about how it might affect our divorce proceedings if it became known she was dating before the divorce was final. The divorce process moved forward with surprising efficiency. Our first mediation session was scheduled for early February, just weeks after my discovery. I'd hired a divorce attorney recommended by my brother's colleague. Her first words to me set the tone for everything that followed. "We're not here for revenge. We're here to help you rebuild your life." The initial division of assets seemed straightforward on paper. 2 cars, 1 house, retirement accounts, and 20 years of accumulated memories to sort through. But every item we discussed carried emotional weight. The breakfast nook table where we'd helped Cameron with his college applications. The garden swing where Sophia had practiced her French vocabulary. Each possession felt tainted by the knowledge that our entire marriage had been built on a foundation of lies. During one particularly difficult mediation session, Michelle became frustrated when I asked for my grandmother's china set, something she'd always claimed as hers, since my grandmother had taught her how to make pierogi using those dishes. "You never even use them," she snapped. "No, but they're the only things I have left of my grandmother that aren't tainted by our marriage." The room fell silent. Even the mediator looked uncomfortable. It was perhaps the only time I'd allowed my bitterness to show openly, and Michelle's face crumpled as the impact of my words hit home. My individual therapy sessions with my therapist became a lifeline. In one session, I broke down completely while discussing a recent dream where I was back in college, driving those 4 hours to visit Michelle. In the dream, I told the therapist, "I keep trying to reach the campus, but the road keeps getting longer, and I can hear Michelle laughing with other people, but I can never find her." "What do you think that dream is telling you?" she asked. "That I was always chasing something that wasn't real," I responded, the realization hitting me as I spoke the words. The children's reactions continued to evolve. Cameron, initially analytical and composed, had a breakdown during a weekend visit. He was helping me pack up my home office when he found an old photo album from his 10th birthday. "Was anything real?" he asked. "Were all our happy memories just pretend?" I held my son as he cried, something I hadn't done since he was a little boy. "The love was real," I assured him. "The love for you and your sister was always real. Sometimes good things can come from complicated situations." Sophia's struggle manifested differently. Her grades continued to slip, and she began spending more time at my temporary apartment than at the family home with Michelle. One evening, over takeout Chinese food, she confessed why. "Mom's dating someone from work," she said, pushing her food around the plate. "The guy she said was just a friend. He comes over for dinner sometimes when I'm there. She acts like everything's normal, like we're supposed to just accept it." The revelation about Michelle dating didn't surprise me as much as it might have once. What broke my heart was watching our daughter grapple with the rapid dismantling of her family unit. Through therapy, I learned to help Sophia process her feelings without demonizing her mother. My own healing journey took unexpected turns. I started attending a divorce support group at my therapist's suggestion. Initially skeptical, I found comfort in sharing experiences with others who understood the unique pain of long-term deception. Their stories helped me realize that while my pain was personal, I wasn't alone in navigating this path. As spring approached, the divorce proceedings entered their final stages. Each day brought new challenges, but also unexpected moments of clarity. I began to notice small changes in myself. I slept better, laughed more easily, and stopped checking my phone constantly for messages from Michelle. The crushing weight of betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it had become more manageable. One Wednesday evening, after another exhausting therapy session, I found myself sitting in my car in the parking lot, staring at our old wedding photo still tucked in the visor. 20 years of memories filtered through a new lens. That's when I realized I wasn't just mourning the loss of my marriage, I was mourning the loss of the story I thought we had. The children's healing progressed in fits and starts. Cameron threw himself into his studies, but called more frequently than before, often late at night when his thoughts wouldn't let him sleep. During one particularly vulnerable conversation, he confessed his fears about his own relationships. "How do you ever trust anyone again, Dad? How do you know what's real?" I thought carefully before responding. "Trust isn't about being certain," I said. "It's about being brave enough to be uncertain, but choosing to believe anyway. The trick is making sure that person is worthy of that choice." Sophia's journey took a different path. After weeks of declining grades and missed swim practices, she finally agreed to see a therapist who specialized in helping teenagers through family transitions. Within a month, Sophia had returned to the pool. "The water doesn't lie," she told me one evening. "It's the only place where everything makes sense right now." The divorce finalization date approached faster than expected. Michelle had been pushing for a quick resolution, likely influenced by her developing relationship with her coworker. During our final mediation session, she made an unexpected confession. "I never thought I deserved you," she said after signing the last document. "Even in college, I kept waiting for you to find someone better. Maybe that's why I did what I did, to prove I wasn't worth your faithfulness." Her words should have moved me, but I felt oddly detached. 20 years too late, I thought, but kept it to myself. Instead, I simply nodded and gathered my copies of the paperwork. The house sold quickly in the spring market. Watching the movers pack up 2 decades of shared life into separate trucks felt surreal. Each item carried memories. The coffee maker we'd bought on our 5th anniversary, the worn leather armchair where I'd read bedtime stories to the kids, the family photos that now needed careful division. One Saturday morning, while sorting through the garage, I found an old shoebox filled with letters we'd written during those college years. Reading them now, I could see the signs I'd missed, the gradually changing tone of her letters, the vague references to new friends, the decreasing frequency of her correspondence, the young man who'd written those passionate replies, who'd driven hours every other weekend, who'd believed so completely in their love, I hardly recognized him anymore. My new apartment slowly began to feel like home. The kids helped me decorate, adding their own touches. Cameron's abstract art prints in the living room, Sophia's collection of swim medals displayed proudly in the study. I bought new furniture, chose different colors, created a space that reflected who I was becoming rather than who I'd been. The healing process brought unexpected challenges. The first time I ran into one of Michelle's former college friends at the grocery store, I had to leave my cart and walk out. But each incident like this became easier to handle. My therapist helped me understand that these reactions were normal, part of processing 2 decades of uncovered truth. 6 months after that fateful dinner party, I sat in my new study, finalizing the last divorce paperwork. The evening light filtered through windows that were solely mine, casting shadows across a life I was slowly rebuilding. The journey was harder than I could have imagined, but also more enlightening. The therapy sessions had evolved from crisis management to growth exploration. During one particularly impactful session, she asked me to identify what I'd gained, not just what I'd lost. "You've been focusing on the 20 years of deception," she noted. "But what about the strength you've shown in these past months? The deeper relationships you've built with your children? The self-respect you've reclaimed?" She was right. Despite the pain, Or perhaps because of it, my bonds with Cameron and Sophia had deepened in unexpected ways. Our Sunday family dinners, now held in my apartment, had become more honest and intimate. We talked about real things, their fears, their dreams, their own struggles with trust and relationships. Cameron, in his final year of college, had chosen to focus his psychology thesis on the impact of long-term deception in families. "Dad," he told me during one of our late-night calls, "I used to think love was about grand gestures and romantic stories. Now I understand it's about daily choices and honest conversations." Sophia found her voice through swimming again, but differently this time. She told me the pool had become her therapy, each lap an opportunity to process her emotions. Her times improved, and she qualified for state championships. When she won her event, both Michelle and I were there, seated in different sections of the bleachers, but both genuinely proud of our daughter's resilience. The support group continued to be a source of strength. One evening, a new member asked how I could be so calm about everything. I surprised myself with my response. "I'm not calm," I admitted. "I'm still angry, still hurt, but I've learned that holding on to that anger only keeps me tied to the betrayal. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to let the past dictate my future." My relationship with Michelle evolved into something I never expected, a cordial co-parenting arrangement focused solely on our children's well-being. We maintained separate lives, but managed to attend important family events without drama. The kids noticed and appreciated our efforts to keep their lives as stable as possible. The last real conversation Michelle and I had about our marriage happened during a co-parenting mediation session. She had finally dropped her defensive stance about her college years. "I've been seeing a therapist on my own," she told me. "I'm starting to understand why I did what I did. It wasn't about you. It was about my own insecurities, my fear of commitment, my need for validation. I know that doesn't make it right, but I want you to know I'm working on myself." I appreciated her honesty, but realized it no longer had the power to affect me the way it once would have. My healing wasn't dependent on her understanding or remorse anymore. Life continued to move forward. I focused on my career, took up bowling, something I'd always wanted to explore, and even joined a hiking group. The first time someone asked me out for coffee, I was surprised to find I was ready to say yes. It wasn't about finding a new relationship. It was about being open to new possibilities. Cameron graduated with honors, his thesis receiving special recognition. During his graduation dinner, he made a toast that brought tears to my eyes. "To my dad, who taught me that integrity isn't about never making mistakes. It's about how you handle the truth when it finally comes to light." Sophia's swimming took her to nationals, and she started receiving college recruitment letters. She chose to apply to schools based on their programs, not their distance from home, a decision both Michelle and I supported. She was learning to make choices for herself, not for her parents' comfort. Looking back now, I realized that discovering the truth about those college years wasn't just about uncovering past infidelity. It was about confronting the reality that sometimes the stories we build our lives around aren't real. The challenge isn't just surviving the discovery, it's learning to build something new and authentic from the ruins of what we thought we had. I don't regret my years with Michelle, despite the deception. They gave me my children, taught me valuable lessons about resilience, and ultimately led me to a deeper understanding of myself. But I've learned that love without honesty is like a house built on sand. It might look beautiful, but it cannot withstand the test of time. Today, I'm not the same person who sat stunned in that dining room listening to old college stories. I'm stronger, wiser, and more authentic in my relationships with others and with myself. The pain hasn't disappeared completely. I doubt it ever will, but it's no longer the defining feature of my story. My journey continues, but now I walk forward with clear eyes and an open heart, ready for whatever life brings next. The truth may have shattered the illusion of my perfect marriage, but it also set me free to build a life based on something far more valuable: genuine self-worth and uncompromising honesty. The end of my marriage wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one written in my own hand, on my own terms. And for the first time in 20 years, every word of it is true.